Welcome to Stories of Hope. This is a podcast by the Dream Center.
Where you will hear from people who have stories that once seemed hopeless.
People whose stories of redemption and life transformation are so powerful, they can only be possible by the power of Jesus. Hey everybody, welcome back to Stories of Hope. We're super excited to keep this season going, this new season, and today we are joined by Hannah Beth Brown. She is an old intern of the Dream Centers, actually. She interned last year in 2023 with us and has just become family pretty much immediately. So thanks for being here today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Pretty much how we always start off these episodes is just we would love to hear just a little bit of your personal testimony, backstory, really anything that you'd love to share just to kind of get to know you a little bit right off the top.
For sure. Well, thank you again for having me to share a little bit of information about me. I grew up in a Christian home, and I'm very, very thankful for that. I think I realize more and more every day what a blessing that is. Coming to college has definitely made me more aware that that's not the norm, even though as a child I for sure thought that that was normal. I had friends and family pouring into me, teaching me about faith, which is such a gift. And I, again, see that more now than I ever have. And throughout my childhood, I attended church. I went to Christian schools. I was very much brought into the faith. I can't imagine my life without it. Yeah. Faith has existed in my family for generations. And I can truly say that the people in my life that have pointed me to Jesus really mean so much to me. But I would say as a young child, I knew about Jesus, but I didn't know him on a personal level. When I was 9 years old, I made the decision to let Jesus into my life. And I prayed a prayer. I got baptized that Sunday, but I still didn't really know what it looked like to live the Christian life, what it looked like to be a follower of Jesus. And I would say that as I transitioned from elementary school to middle school, I really explored that question of what does it look like to be a follower of Jesus. And it wasn't until around middle school where I began to pursue faith at a personal level, and it really became more real to me as I read scripture, as I prioritized prayer. It really became something I desired more so than just something my family chose to do. And then as I transitioned to high school, I realized I knew what Christians did. I knew that church was important. I knew that prayer was important. I knew the value of scripture and discipleship, but I didn't really know what it looked like to pick up my cross daily and follow Jesus. And I would say through high school, that's a lesson I learned over and over again. And through different seasons and different challenges in my life, God really taught me what it looks like to be a Christian, because I learned that being a Christian isn't just a part of your life. It is the essence of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I didn't want to be a shallow Christian with my faith just being a part of my life. I wanted it to consume every part of my life. And that's something I'm still learning. But in high school, I really began to realize that I wanted my life to be centered around Jesus. And coming to college has even added on to that growth journey. I've loved being in college. I'm at Anderson University, which I absolutely love. It has been a true roller coaster. I can't really figure out another way to describe college. There's ups and downs and turnarounds, but God has been so good in the midst of it all. It's been a huge transition, but something that God has been teaching me more recently is just the practice of being in his presence. And I think we have talked about this before, but I've really been learning how to live life with Jesus and be present with him and enjoy the life that he's given. So that's something I'm continuing to learn, and I'm just blown away by how God continues to teach me and grow me in my faith.
I love it. I realized I didn't even say that we were at Anderson. We're obviously in a very different setting for those who have watched the podcast before and are listening. But we just thought it'd be cool to come out and spend a couple minutes here.
So
and
glad you did.
In your environment, your building's right behind us, which is hilarious that it worked out that way.
Live right here.
Yeah. And also you talk about the crazy journey of college. Sarah's also an AU alum, so she knows all about it. And I know I've got a bunch of friends and a bunch of people I get to serve with at church that go to this school as well. So I love getting to be here.
And I think you coming to AU is a really big part about how you even became involved with the Dream Center.
Yeah.
So I think it's really appropriate that we're here because we met you because you coming here, which is kind of cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with the Dream Center to begin with, and kind of what that whole, it's kind of a crazy story, so I'll let you tell it.
Yes, for sure. It is a crazy story, but I love that it's such a God story.
Yeah.
So as I started at Anderson, I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. But this past summer, the summer of 2023, my family moved to the upstate area. And as we were in the process of moving, my parents met Jim and Chris Wilson because we actually were in the process of buying their previous home.
Yeah.
So my parents got to know Jim and Chris. They fell in love with them and their family. And as they got to know them, the Dream Center came up in conversation.
Yeah.
And I remember my parents telling me about the Dream Center. So I did a little bit of research on my own to learn more about the Dream Center. It sounded like an incredible place, and I wanted to learn more about it. And as I looked on the website, I really was amazed at the mission of the Dream Center, how different this organization was from others that I had heard of before. I just thought, I really, really want to be involved in this in some way, shape, or form. At the time, I wasn't sure what that looked like. I didn't know if that meant serving occasionally or volunteering. But soon enough, I was connected with Brady and learned about internships. And before I knew it, I was set up to intern at the Dream Center over the summer, which was a huge answer to prayer because I was a little late in thinking about internships. Honestly, summer came up on me really fast, and I thought it would be wonderful to gain some experience over the summer. People my age are involved in internships to gain some practical experience. And when the Dream Center door opened, I was so excited and so honored to be a part of what the Dream Center is doing. And it was honestly just such a blessing to learn more about the organization, not just reading different things on your website, but getting to be hands-on and involved in the Dream Center's work. It's just amazing how it all worked out, but I'm so glad it did, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No, yeah. I mean, we feel the same way. Like
Absolutely.
You're talked about on campus.
We still talk about you.
Oh,
I still talk about y'all.
And I've even told you this. When you left, we all felt it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's a little bit different. Like, we've had so many interns, whatever. But when you left, it was like, we actually felt your presence.
I
leave.
felt that too.
Yeah.
I thought, man, I miss these people.
Yeah, we
And
did.
I talk about y'all here, even though not everyone I talk to knows who y'all are.
Right.
They probably do in a sense because
That's great.
I mention the Dream Center all the time.
I love
just
that.
love you guys.
One of the things that I'm thankful for just in your situation too is that usually the interns that we have come in are like seniors and they're on their way out. So they intern and then they move on very quickly to where we've had this is our third full year of having the program, and we've had like 18 or 19 come through, which is awesome. But usually it's like their internship ends and then they're moving on to grad school, or they're moving on, or they're getting married, or they're like starting a career, to where I'm thankful that like you did yours earlier on. So then that way, like you got to speak at Dream Big last year and you're a part, and we've talked about you coming back for a season, just like all these different things, to where like it's the first time we've really had the chance to have an intern on the podcast who's still around and able to do it, and isn't just like off, like moved to another city or whatever. And so I'm just super grateful that we get to still be building a relationship.
Me too.
Absolutely.
And seeing the fruit of what you're learning at school and what you learned in your time with us, and just all these different things. And it's just very unique, which is awesome. One of the other things I'd love to kind of hear about is over the last year, between the internship, between school, between family moving and finding a new church and all these different things, like what's been one of the big things that God has like been revealing to you that could be hopeful for anybody listening, just to kind of stir up some faith and give a little bit of hope?
For sure. That's such a good question. I think one thing that God has revealed to me, more so recently, but definitely over the past year or so, one thing I have realized is just the value of slowing down. And I've realized that slowing down helps you be more aware of the people around you. And oftentimes when we refer to giving hope, sometimes we don't feel as though we have anything to give,
Yeah.
or we feel like we've given all we have to give.
Yeah.
But one thing that I have noticed in my own life and in the lives of other people is that even when we don't feel like we have a lot to give, God always provides abundantly more than we could ever possibly need.
Right.
And the truth is, even the smallest things, whether it's a kind word or a smile or a gift, those little things oftentimes make the biggest impact. And I think hope especially can come in big and small packages.
Yeah.
And being aware that God can use big and small things in order to make a tremendous impact is something that I've learned. But oftentimes you don't accept those opportunities until you're aware that they exist.
Right.
And that's something God has challenged me with, is being aware of the people around me, being aware of the opportunities around me, even being aware of my physical location at a certain moment, just opening my eyes and my heart to what God has in store for any given day or any given season.
Beautiful.
It's just incredible to think about how God can use us to bridge connections and be a positive light in our world.
It's beautiful. I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I love how you said that, taking time and slowing down to be more aware.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Jesus demonstrated in the Bible.
Yes.
He would always go the long way around to meet somebody,
Right.
or he would stay in a town for a couple extra days, or he would even pause and wait for 3 days for Lazarus.
Right.
It's just being very conscious of where you are, where you're at, who you're around, and being okay if it takes a little longer to get there, because
Right.
it's gonna be beautiful at the end.
Yeah.
For sure. I love that Jesus lived an unhurried life.
Yeah.
He never once thought, I got to go here, I got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
He just was very present in every moment, and I think there's so much value to that, and I love that ultimately he's our example of what true hope looks like.
Yes.
We find it in him and we experience it from him, and that's one of the biggest blessings, because it can never be taken away from us.
Right.
Anything really can be taken from us, but the hope of Jesus is something that never is.
And even after a busy season, or he feeds 5,000, or he works all these miracles, he's like, okay, I now need to go off and slow down,
Right.
and take time to talk to my Father and to refresh and to regroup and to make sure on his human side that he was still focused on the right things. That's great. That's so helpful. I love that. What does it look like, even just for your family as a whole, kind of this huge transition? You've got siblings, younger siblings, and what does it look like for y'all as a family to kind of just regroup and change locations and start a new season of life, like in this area?
For sure. We have loved being in this new area. And to be quite honest, transition is very normal for my family.
Right.
This move was our 10th move as a family.
Jeez.
Wow.
So we have been bouncing around for quite a while. And it has been such an adventure. A lot of times we get asked if we're a military family just because of the amount of times we have moved. It has been related to my dad's job, but he is not in the military. And I honestly can't imagine not having moved in so many places.
Yeah.
And for us as a family, transition has really brought us close together as a family, because no matter where we've been, we've had to change homes, change states, change locations, change schools, change activities. Everything changes, but my parents had such a positive outlook every time with transition, because they always told us we're still all together. The 6 of us are all still a family. We're going to have each other. And every single time we've moved, God has abundantly provided more than I ever thought was possible.
Right.
And that is just such a beautiful blessing, because I remember, especially when I was younger, transition really scared me. And now it's something that really excites me, because I can't imagine not having lived the places I've lived and learned the lessons I've learned throughout those seasons. And I really don't know if my family would be as close as we are without the transitions, because during those seasons we have to lean on each other, and ultimately we have to lean on the Lord, because one lesson I've learned through transition is that even when everything in life changes, God never ever does.
Absolutely.
And that was a very fundamental lesson I learned when I was younger, and continue to learn now, because that is honestly the thing that has kept me and my family going as some of these transitions have been difficult. they've been hard, but they've also been so exciting. And knowing that God will never change and his ability to provide continually in so many places and so many seasons has blown me and my family away.
Yeah. Which I think is a huge testimony, because I at least have some friends to where a lot of moves didn't necessarily, I'm not saying it tore their family apart, but it wasn't always a unifying experience to where kids are leaving friends they've made, or they get used, or they join a sports team and they've got to abandon that team, or and so it being something that's brought your family nothing but together is a very, very cool and I think unique situation.
Absolutely.
that can for sure can be hope giving to some people, just because, again, personally, I just know people who that's been very difficult. That's really cool.
And I wish I could paint it all in a positive picture. There are times when we have tried to pull each other's hair out, just because moving really brings out your true self. If you've never moved before, it really shows your true colors.
Right. I mean, that's true.
So in a way, it has helped us all see all the sides of each other, which has been funny now that I'm reflecting on it. But in certain moments, it can be challenging. Yeah. But even during those challenging moments where things are really difficult, it has always been a growth journey. We've always grown through that, and I just think that that's been so formative for my family.
Awesome.
Still talking about challenging moments, but pivoting a little bit, has there been a time when you feel like your faith was tested, that it seemed like you had to tap into the Spirit just a lot more than normal just to get through a situation, a season? Has there been a time like that?
There have definitely been times like that. As I'm thinking about this question, I am trying to figure out which example to share. This happens quite often. Yeah. But the first example that came to my mind was the college transition. I am very indecisive. So as a senior, when I was thinking about college, I had no idea where to even start, because as I've talked about, I love my family. I thought, who came up with this idea of college where you go far away and leave your family? That's just crazy. So for the longest time, I just thought, maybe I just won't go to college. This just doesn't sound like it's for me. But I remember praying about college. I knew that my parents wanted me to attend college, and deep down I wanted to attend college too. It just was hard for me to wrap my head around the transition that it would be, especially not knowing where I would be going, because senior year, you apply to all these places. You don't even know really what some of the places are like unless you've been there. And by the time my senior year rolled around, I did have it narrowed down to a couple places, which was helpful because my indecisiveness was really starting to kick in when I realized, all right, I have a few options and they're all really great options. And I think for me, I was most scared because I thought I would pick the wrong choice. And I just remember praying that God would make it abundantly clear where I was supposed to go. And throughout my senior year, I never quite felt the clarity that I hoped I would feel. And in that, I was somewhat frustrated, but I began to realize that in our lives, sometimes God gives us multiple good choices, and we have the freedom to choose, because it wasn't like I had any sort of bad option. They were all great options, and I felt that God was teaching me that oftentimes he gives us multiple options to choose from. And eventually, God did make it very clear that I was supposed to be at Anderson. All the arrows were pointing towards Anderson, and I thought, okay, thank you for answering my prayer. I did feel clarity about Anderson, but the transition coming to college really tested my faith in that I had never made a decision quite as big as the transition to college. It was also a decision I was making more on my own. My family has transitioned a lot, but I had never done a transition like that on my own. I was thinking about college, and I thought, this time I'm moving, but my family's not moving with me. It's funny because they did follow me here.
They ended up,
2 years later, but in the senior mind of myself, I just remember thinking, this is crazy. I've never done anything like this before. I'm coming to college. My family's not coming with me. And that in and of itself really tested my faith, because all I had to depend on was the Lord. But in doing so, I realized just how good his plans were, and his purpose for me was to be at Anderson, and I honestly didn't even see that immediately in coming to Anderson, but especially after the first year of college, I really can't imagine me being anywhere else in life right now, and I'm so thankful for Anderson, but it really did test my faith because I began to question, even freshman year, is this where I'm supposed to be?
Right.
Is this right? Especially because there's so much to adjust to, and I began to doubt if this was the place God had called me to be because things weren't going the way I thought they were going to go.
Right.
But ultimately, now that I'm looking back, and even being in my junior year now, I can so clearly see that this has been God's plan all along. And thankfully, I don't have to worry about making a wrong choice because oftentimes God blesses us with multiple options, and he can use us really wherever we are to be his hands and feet.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Your story and my story is very similar because I actually went to AU a couple of years later than when I was like supposed to or whatever. But I was between AU and then another school. And I was torn between the both. And I remember having a conversation with my mom she was like, well, the Lord's letting you pick, but the faith aspect of it, are you going to trust him with the decision?
Right.
Are you going to trust him that he's going to be good regardless? And after months and months of like stressing and praying and having so much anxiety about it, I remember like I was actually on tour here. Like I was doing the spend the night orientation, whatever. And I loved it, but I want to go to I wanted to pursue the other one. And then as soon as I made that decision, the Lord like time and time and like 2 or 3 times right after that, it was like almost like affirming it. It's like, I'm going to let you step out and you choose to believe that I've got this. And then as soon as I made the decision to have that faith, it was like so much peace after that.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
I love that. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time. I'd love to kind of hear, as we wrap up, what's like one of the things that you like really learned or took away from your time at the Dream Center as a whole? Like what's one thing that maybe you learned about ministry, you learned about, we worked through a book together and had some really great conversations. Like what was there anything that you took away that like really changed Hannah Beth as a whole? Not necessarily like just what the Dream Center ended up doing, but like just something that you learned that like completely or started to shift some stuff in your life.
For sure. That's such a good question because I feel like there's so many takeaways I could talk about from being at the Dream Center. And I love that what I learned at the Dream Center also has paired so well with what I'm learning at Anderson in my classes, but also in my own personal spiritual life. It just is amazing to me how all of that has combined to help me learn more about ministry and more about God's word and more about his character. I would say one thing I really enjoyed being at the Dream Center was observing how the faculty and the staff, even the residents, every part of the Dream Center represents the body of Christ so well. And the aspect of ministry cannot flourish without each part doing its part well.
Right.
And I have seen that through the Dream Center. I've also been able to learn that in my own personal life. But seeing the way that the Dream Center was able to truly embody Jesus's words of being hands and feet has showed me that ministry is truly all about people and pouring into people. It's about encouraging and equipping others and building others up. That's exactly what all of you do. And it would not function if all of you weren't playing a specific role. And one thing about ministry, too, that I've noticed through the Dream Center, through interning, and even by being at Anderson, it requires a level of obedience and saying yes to the Lord.
Yes.
Like we talked about, even with Anderson, having faith to trust God with our decisions and trust God with our activities, with our jobs, with every part of our lives. It definitely requires a yes so that God can begin to work in and through us. And it requires a yes even when we don't know all the answers or the outcomes. And that for me can be really scary because I love to have things planned. I love to have a schedule and a routine, but sometimes God does not work that way. And honestly, if I knew what God had planned now, I don't even know if I would say yes. So
Right.
in some sense, the yes is so important even when we don't know the answers or the outcomes, because it allows us to develop a deeper faith
Right.
in him and a deeper trust. And I think that has been a huge takeaway for me, seeing the way that the Dream Center faculty and staff have said yes and have committed to ministry. And you may not know all the answers or all the outcomes, but seeing the way that you've put so much obedience and so much love toward ministry has really changed my whole outlook on what ministry truly is.
Praise the Lord.
Well,
That's awesome.
I love that.
Great. That's perfect. I'm so grateful. And we've told you tons of times as well, but we're also just so thankful for you and proud of you and the way that you, I think back to your presentation at the end of your internship where you got to speak over our staff and kind of just share with what you learned, what you shared at Dream Big. I'm just so grateful to see that the work that our team as a whole is putting in is having impact and is
For sure.
doing what we set out to do.
Right.
And so just thank you just for the encouragement that it is to us as we sit back and reflect, are we doing the right thing? Or are we actually helping? So it's very encouraging.
You definitely are helping, and that's
you.
just a little fraction.
Yeah,
So
right.
just know that I could say so much more, but genuinely,
Yeah.
I cannot thank the Dream Center enough. Y'all have been such an incredible blessing to me, and
Awesome.
I'm so excited to see what God's going to continue to do.
Yeah. Me too. I'm also excited to see if hopefully you'll be back with us here soon. So
Yes, I sure hope so.
it'll be great.
I would love to be back if y'all will have me back.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Done deal.
Absolutely.
Already signed off on that for sure. But thank you for doing this and being here and
Of course.
sharing your story and kind of just letting us hear a little bit more about your whole journey. It's super encouraging, really awesome to hear. And again, we're just so proud of you. So just thank you.
Thank y'all. I loved being on the podcast.
Yeah.
It was a treat.
It's been great. Well, thank y'all for listening this week, and we'll see you on the next episode of the podcast.